growth requires more than capital.
Why do we call it the cheat code? Nobody said growth had to be fair.
Revenue solves everything.
Welcome to the cheat code. What was our fastest path to revenue?
We tend to like to do things the hard way.
What's the cheat code? It's giving yourself an unfair advantage over the others.
What is it that really works, and how are we going to grow these organizations?
That's our cheat code.
Hello, welcome back. You are on season 3 now of the cheat code. I'm joined once again by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Josh Wagner. Josh, happy summer to you.
Happy summer. So damn hot.
So damn hot. Season 3, we're cranking it up. So this is, I think, our 3rd or 4th episode here this season as we make the pivot from partnerships to marketing. Although with today's guest, we're definitely going to get a little bit of that good drug that we love, which is partnerships. I want to welcome to the show an awesome guest, someone who's been a thought leader and has just been kind of raising the bar as it pertains to partnerships. With not only his best practices and commentary, but now a new startup focused on that space. So welcome to the show, Mr. Greg Portnoy, CEO of Euler, and we'll definitely give him some opportunity to dive in and give us some insight on that platform and what it's doing around partnerships. But first and foremost, welcome to the show, man.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. Glad we finally got to do it.
Absolutely. So, topic this season is obviously marketing, but, you can't really run partnerships successfully, at least in my opinion, without, a strong marketing footprint as well as an entire strong go-to-market footprint. So just kicking us right into where we love to go, which is your own personal cheat code. Break down your cheat code as it relates to marketing and certainly some of the success that you've seen in partnerships and launching this new organization.
Yeah. So I didn't think I had a marketing cheat code other than all the partner marketing I've done in my career. But in speaking with you guys, I realized that the entire way that I've launched and brought Euler to market has been a marketing cheat code. And that's been through, personal thought leadership and personal brand development. So that is absolutely my cheat code.
Yeah, so this is a near and dear topic and one that often goes off track pretty quickly when we're talking to new founders about, building a brand. What does that look like as it pertains to, the market, social media in particular, and so on. So break down a little bit further, like what that means to you, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the negative aspects of this. They just see that like so, such deliberate selling rather than telling, and just kind of being this, human billboard under the guise of being a quote unquote thought leader. What's that actually look like in practice for you? And where have you seen the success there?
Yeah. So it's pretty funny because I never wanted to be a thought leader. I never intended to be a thought leader. I always said if I built a business, I'd be happy to be extremely successful and have nobody know my name. And yet I found myself in a situation where LinkedIn specifically, which is, I'm selling B2B software. So that is the place to be. Right. LinkedIn specifically, I always found it a little bit odd how over time it kind of transitioned from just being like a professional platform to then what kind of felt like a very salesy marketing oriented platform. And I never started posting anything or really talking about anything on there because I always had the impression that like, hey, those that can do are busy doing, and those that can't do talk about doing,
Yep.
And so that's the way that I felt about it. And so it actually took me, it's really funny. I started posting regularly towards the last week of December of last year. So about 6 months ago, it took me a year to talk myself into start doing that because I knew that I was working in partnerships. Before that, I starting Euler, I was consulting. I was like, I got to do it. I got to start talking about it. But I think it's the folks that actually know a lot of stuff that often don't. They have that humility to know that there's a lot that they don't know. And so I didn't know if anybody had any interest in the things that I had to say, just in full honesty. And then I finally talked myself into it and I started doing it because I did see that it was working for other people. And I also transparently saw that there was a lot of content out there, especially about partnerships, but there wasn't a lot of good content out there. And there wasn't a lot of folks with my own background of doing the actual job for 10 plus years that were talking about it. There are a few now, which is awesome, but there weren't. And so I started talking about it. And I have to say that the reaction, the response from the community and the market was nuts. I mean, my audience went from 5,000 in December to close to 15,000 now in a little over 6 months. and there was no engagement groups. There was no like paid audience or like that. It was just me saying like, here's my honest perspective on partnerships, on the market, on how, here's tips on tactically how to do your job more effectively. And it wasn't selling. I didn't actually start posting about Euler till a couple of months ago. So the first entire like 4 or so months of me posting was just, hey, I'm going to give back to the community. I'm just going to share what I know. And the community responded and the market responded very positively. So that's really kind of how I've built up the following, and then leveraged it to launch Euler massively, again, all through the ecosystem, all through the community, and didn't spend $1 on marketing.
Yeah, there are so many like really important messages in what you said there, Greg. I mean, first, we'll go with what you said first. You didn't seek out being a thought leader, and you can see through that mask really quickly, right? When you go on LinkedIn and the people that are trying to be thought leaders and like banging their chest, it just doesn't feel right, right? It gives you that creep factor, whatever it is you want to call it. And then the second piece of what you said is bringing experience to the table. That's what people really care about. You, in a humble way, sharing your experience and saying, hey, these are the things that I went through when I was doing X, Y, and Z. What are you seeing? Help me understand, educate me as well. And that's what creates the dialogue and actually the thought leadership that I think people resonate to. If you know me at all, which you don't really, I'm like, get off my lawn, Gen X guy who's like, I don't want to do social media, any of that crap, right? But, it's funny, like 3 or 4 years ago, Justin hired some like social media expert to come into our old company and like talk to us about this stuff. And I was like, fine, I'll give it a go, right? Like I'll just start posting stuff. But it gets into a little bit of a rhythm, right? You start to have fun with it. You actually do engage with people and you start meeting people. They're like, oh, I could meet this person in real life. We were talking about the Arcadia Leadership Summit coming up. Like, I'm going to meet some of those people that I haven't met before, but I have actually had meaningful dialogue with them. So I think some of those key points of you're not going out to be a thought leader, you're bringing real life experience, you're being humble. Like those are the things that matter. And when you do, need to sell something, quote unquote, it's receptive because you've given a lot more to the group than you ever asked in return at that point. So, how do you keep that going? How do you keep that momentum in that process and not go down the rabbit hole of some of those things that we look at and are like, oh God.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I agree with everything you just said. And it was honestly like you said something that has really made it easier to keep going, which is the response from folks, like the positive feedback that you get. Like I never expected to have people messaging me regularly being like, hey, thank you so much for what you're posting. Either it's helping me do my job or it's just making me feel seen, or I've connected to other people like in the comments, or I got a job through like some of the jobs posts I did. And so that actually was very fulfilling. I didn't expect to really have an impact on people like that it did. And so that made it really easy to keep talking about it. And I have a bit of, and I don't know if this is like a founder thing, I have a bit of perfectionism in me. And so I like reread my posts, like I'll write them all at one point in a week, and then I'll like wait a few days and then I'll reread them all. And I'll usually like tinker and I like read it and I'm like, does this add value, or does this sound like me standing up on my soapbox, and I just always challenge myself to not say things just because I can. And whether or not people are actually going to like them. And look, it's my batting average is not perfect by any means, but I think it's pretty good, and like I take feedback, I see what resonates, I see what doesn't, but ultimately it's just, I think just trying to stay humble. And I don't know what the secret is there transparently. It's just not letting it go to your head, which look, I mean, you get to a point where like I have companies now reaching out to me on a regular basis, small and very large, being like, hey, can you come speak at our company's offsite? Can you talk to our team? Like, it's like that sort of a thing. And it's, I feel like it's very easy to blur the lines between like my opinion based on experience and just my opinion. You know what I mean? And so like not going into the realm of like, this is how you do it. In the same way that I've heard like a lot of good success founders, when like earlier stage founders ask them for advice, they're like, hey, I don't want to give you advice, but I just want to share some experiences and then you make what you will of it. Like, that's kind of the approach that I want to take. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I've seen. I'm going to give you the information and you make your best decision based on the information provided.
Well, I think there's, a really key point there around humility. First and foremost, I do think like humility and being humble is the hurdle to get over, but then it's also the key to doing it successfully long term. Because to your point, like I hear so many people like, no one wants to hear my crap. Like, I don't know everything, so on and so forth. Like that is the hurdle to get over. And I think as a founder or anyone in go-to-market, and especially at an early stage organization, like you have to think about the financial equation that is, available to be captured here. And that's what should provide some of that attractiveness. I think can provide the springboard over that hurdle, which is like, if you, we're talking about LinkedIn here predominantly, like it can obviously vary based on who you're selling to and so on. But like if you've identified your ICP and you know that they gravitate towards a certain gathering place, which in this example is LinkedIn, like there's no barrier between putting up a post and reaching those people. Like normally there's a financial barrier there. There's a gatekeeper, like the social media and social platforms provide that direct access, which I think is incredibly powerful. Leveraging it in a way that maintains the license for folks to consume that information with trust. Again, I think like humility is the key to doing so. Like that, hey, I've seen this before. Here's what happened. Or yeah, I think you mentioned like hiring in there as well, which is one of the biggest vehicles. Like, hey, I know this person, and based on my experience, like they're awesome. If you're in this type of company and this type of stage, like they'd be a great fit for you. Like connecting people is just such a powerful way to give back. But you have to maintain that humble thread there. And I think, again, to your point, like making sure that you're serving a need is, in my opinion, the way to maintain that connection. And so I'm curious, like the research, do you have a research process that you go through where you're saying like, hey, this is being talked about a lot, but seems like no one's providing an answer, or this is something that I could weigh in on? Like, how do you maintain that connection to the community to ensure like you've got some value to provide?
So I'm very fortunate in this situation because I have posted about this where I literally built Euler. So I had the idea for Euler, which is like a partnerships operating system. I had the idea when I was doing consulting and partnerships back in 2022. And I saw that there was a gap. And I said, you know what? I'm going to validate whether what I'm seeing is actually a thing, a problem. Mm-hmm. So I reached out, because over 10 years of building partner programs, I'd obviously built out a big network of partner leaders. I went and I reached out to a bunch of them, and I was like, hey, is this really a problem? Is what I'm seeing here actually the case? And then I asked more and more questions. I spent 3 months just having a ton of conversations validating the problem. And then we started building the product. But then I kept having those conversations at an increasing velocity. And so now in the last year and a half, I've spoken to over 200 partner leaders. And now I'm fortunate to since we launched, just have a ton of demos and sales calls every single day with the same audience that I'm actually talking to with the content. Right. The nice thing is I get to kill all these birds with a few stones, in that the audience that I'm talking to on LinkedIn is also the audience that I'm talking to with the product, and getting those conversations and hearing what they're dealing with. Because we don't just I don't hop on like a salesperson and say, here's a product, do you want it? I'm like, hey, tell me about your program. Tell me about your challenges. Tell me about your business, your structure. And these things come out naturally in the conversation. And that is actually the cannon fodder that I have for talking about what I talk about on LinkedIn. And I haven't gotten to the point of looking at like the stuff that other people are talking about, and I feel like they're talking about it wrong. I definitely did that at the beginning. I would see that probably happening more as it goes on, because there are more people starting to talk about it. But mostly it just comes from my day-to-day conversations with like people that are actually in the trenches right now, and seeing that like the challenges that I experienced, they're still being experienced commonly.
Yeah. I mean, that organic voice of customer approach is going to win, right? Like it's winning on LinkedIn, and then you're translating that into your business. I mean, there's no other way to distill that down. So I want to get your take then on, you've got this direct pull through from what you're doing, right? You've built this platform, you use this platform to be a springboard into building a product. And then it's kind of a full circle feedback loop, which is phenomenal. But what is your take on what's happening now in LinkedIn, specifically in B2B, where the consumer influencer marketing type of model is starting to make its way into B2B? Do you feel like B2B trusts those people? Is that going to be a thing?
I've been surprised at how much it's starting to happen. because our customers are B2B SaaS companies.
Yeah.
And I personally, in the programs that I built, we never had an affiliate model. That was always a B2C.
Yeah.
And now affiliate is coming up like more and more. It's still not like the primary use case, but I think what's really happened is, especially with PLG technology companies, it's a much more of a D2C model for buying software. So it makes sense that it would have evolved a little bit. I think it's starting to happen more only because traditional sales and marketing channels are now so noisy and so much less effective. And so there is some leveraging of people's personal brands and networks. This whole, I'm sure you guys have heard about, or probably even talked to someone here about, like the whole go to network thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is just good old fashioned business development and partnership with a new name as they do. So I think it's starting to happen. I like you, am very, very curious as to like, what is the elasticity of that particular channel, and how quickly does that become crowded and untrustworthy? Because right now, if like, you're looking for something and I like shoot you a message like, hey, I have a guy, or I have a solution that would be helpful for you. That's different than if like just random people are starting to message you, or like I'm just putting it in my newsletter and blasting it out to people. So I don't know, like it's definitely more prevalent than it's ever been, but I can't say I would personally bet on it being like the motion, because ultimately, well, I guess it depends on the price point, right? Like if you're looking for like some AI tool and I send you 5 AI tools and they're all about $50 a month, it's a very different consideration than if it's like, hey, you're buying something that's 12, 20, 50K a year.
Right.
So,
yeah, scale kind of screws all that stuff up. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like you're talking about relationships, you're talking about trust, and like do that in a one-to-one or one-to-few, method is doable. Like whether you can do it to thousands of people and maintain that same degree of like organic connection and value, like can you be valuable to 1,000 people at a time with an intro? Lot more difficult to do, right? Like B2B, that relationship and like the quality like behind the curtain is really what is the payoff. Like you can't look at someone's abs and say like, oh, it's going to make a great intro, like you can in B2C. Like I'm not going to buy an energy shake from these folks. I'm buying things that are going to be, impactful for my business. So unfortunately, I do think scale is the killer of all things good there. And to your point, like eventually you'll see a bunch of software that facilitates this, and now it'll be like this new acronym that everyone's chasing. But I think if you can maintain quality as your North Star, like whether we're talking about personal brand building, whether we're talking about intros and relationships and go to network and so on, like that has to be the North Star, and where it guides you is probably the right place to be versus the alternative.
Right. I think it's ultimately about the quality of the person making that referral rather than the referral itself. That matters as well, obviously, but also nobody's buying B2B software on an impulse decision. Like if you're like, hey, I need a new shake, and someone sends you something, you're like, cool, this looks good. All right, I'm just going to buy this. No one's putting their job on the line or their budget on the line for like, oh, I think this was a good idea. It looks cool.
Yeah. Well,
maybe not nobody. I shouldn't say nobody.
Well, I think the quality thing is totally right, though. I mean, I've seen it happen where, we always make fun of B2B marketers for not being as clever as B2C marketers, right? And the considered purchase deal is a part of that. But like I've seen some people who, are that 30,000 plus follower, they're doing the influencer thing. They talk about building their brand and all this kind of stuff. And then now they magically have a pullover from the company that they're endorsing. They write their normal everyday post, and then like the last sentence is, by the way, if you want to look at B2B commission software, go visit Spiff. I'm like, what? Wait, who? What? It just like, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I've had people reach out to me to do that stuff, by the way. Like,
I'm sure you have.
That was the crazy thing to me. They're like, oh yeah, we'll pay you to post about us on LinkedIn. And I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not my
And that's going to dilute you. I mean, that's the quality message right there. Yeah.
Like, I'm curious if that works ultimately.
I am too. I am too.
So also speaking of scale, we were chatting a little bit before we started this pod about hiring and like the challenge that every founder goes through with, trying to scale items that they're doing very well because it's in their wheelhouse directly. But then eventually, like you need to build teams around this, and you need them to continue to do these best practices that you developed. And that's always been one of my pain points is trying to get other folks. Josh mentioned it earlier, like other folks tapping into their networks, and even a network that can span a buying committee. Like, hey, I'm attached at this level, but we need buy-in at the field level, and maybe someone in the org is more aligned to that level. It's difficult to try to get people to do this. They have to kind of go through the same realization that you did, which is, hey, there's value here. If I can come up with a way to do it that's authentic, I think it's a great route to market. Have you given any thought to, having other folks from the team, or eventually, like when you hire, having, is this something that you would encourage them to do as well in terms of engaging and personal brand building?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's absolutely worth a shot. Our evolution of this is just other content properties, maybe like a LinkedIn Live or a newsletter. We're definitely going to have like content on our site that like is an extension of my LinkedIn post of like just valuable content for our audience, for the people. So it's not like you're not just coming here to buy software maybe, but you're also coming here to find an extension and more depth to the things that I'm just touching on rather lightly, obviously on LinkedIn. So that would be from a business perspective, and then just more of a content strategy for sure, because again, there's a big gap in the partnership space specifically. And then as far as people we hire, I mean, yeah, I don't see why not ultimately, because one, it really works. Two, there's a gap. And three, hopefully to the earlier conversation, we're hiring people that also have a background in the space and also understand like the true value of the problems the solutions that we're bringing to market. And I've seen some companies adopt this where like their SDRs and their salespeople and like other executives are starting to do it. And I think you guys have seen it too. Like it can definitely be really successful, but you said something really important, which is that it's about the like whether or not it's authentic and whether or not the quality is there. And just posting to post, you'll get reach, but you're not going to build an audience, So I'm very surprisingly bullish on this LinkedIn content thing, and then just content in general these days.
I actually want to tie together what we were talking about with that, the hiring, and what we were talking about pre-show, just for context for people that weren't listening. You said, I'm going to keep doing founder-led sales because I can speak to these people. I sat in their seat and I know what's going on. And then on the show just a little bit ago, you said, I don't come to the discovery call like a salesperson. I come with curiosity and this and that. I'm like, well, frankly, that's what a salesperson should do. So what are your thoughts on moving from founder-led sales? This is a big topic in our portfolio, other VCs' portfolios. Trust me. What are your thoughts on, you're in founder-led sales mode right now. You got momentum, you got the platform. How do you wrap your head around scaling that away from just you being the head of the snake?
Yeah. I think about this all the time. It keeps me up at night. Like I said earlier, my ideal is that I can hire people that also had a similar background to me, or at least some background in partnerships. So when they get on a call with a partner leader, they understand immediately, like both folks are speaking the same language. Maybe they didn't necessarily have all the same experiences. Like I talk to folks building types of programs or partnerships that I've never built, but it's close enough. And we genuinely, like, we're not selling to sell. Like, because I've been a partner leader, because I'm literally selling to myself who I was for the last decade, I don't have this, like, just give me your money. I don't care if we're really solving a problem for you. So we approach this very much of like and I say this to people, like my worst outcome is that somebody either buys Euler prematurely or they buy it, but it's not used properly. And then it makes them look bad, or they don't get a positive ROI on the product. Because ultimately, like, everything I do on LinkedIn, everything I do speaking at events, everything I build with Euler, it's all with the goal of like elevating the partnerships profession and getting more businesses to invest in a channel that I truly know can and should be one of the most powerful and cost-effective channels that they have to grow their business. And that only happens if like I help these folks make good decisions. And so like, I think you mentioned, you saw my post about like, don't buy Euler if you don't meet some of these requirements. Like, we turn down folks all the time, which might sound stupid from like a founder perspective, but ultimately, like, I want to have raving fans. I want to have positive ROI. I want to help these teams show ROI on themselves and their teams and their relationships and the product. And so I think it's more, to get back to your question, it's more about someone that comes in with that same perspective of like, I understand what you do. I understand the problems that we're solving, and I'm focused on making this a very, very positive decision for you and your business. And ultimately, if we can accomplish those two things, it will be good for us as well. And so I don't think it's unrealistic to try to find someone like that to extend the team with, but it's definitely going to be not a transactional sale. And it'd bring a high bar to it with the hiring.
Well, when you think about, what really makes great marketing, great sales, great fill in the blank, it's the perspective of the buyer, of the customer. Like, do you really understand what's going on there? Have you pinpointed a problem that you can solve? And do you know what the value of that solution is, right? And so, unless you've tapped into that, we had this conversation with founders all the time, like, especially during pipeline calls, like, oh, this is going to close. Or why would they buy this? Like, what is the value to them? Like, if we don't know the answer to that question, I guarantee they do not know the answer to that question. Like, the successful role of sales is finding that. And also, getting back to kind of the content and the marketing approach and the hack there, like finding problems that you can solve with insight, with content, with, just even conversation is the most important aspect of that. And so when people talk about like, can you scale this out into, a sales motion or whatever? Like, I think the question they're really asking is like, can you scale this out into a good sales motion? Or are you going to settle for, a bad selling process? And a bad selling process, we've all got thousands of points of contact there. Like, we've all been part of a selling process that we didn't feel like what we were saying was being heard, that the solution on the other end of the phone made no sense for our business. It's a waste of our time. And so like, just always keeping the customer at the center of everything, regardless of the, go-to-market output there, I think is by far and away like the most important takeaway.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And I would extend it to the current like market that we find ourselves in. Like, we're out of ZER, like the sales-led motion to build these companies. So I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name the company, but I'm sure if you look at my background, you could probably figure it out. There was a very, very highly capitalized company that I built a partnerships department at. At the peak, we were sending people bottles of Dom, AirPod Pros, just to take a demo call. So like, forget all of the human capital and time and money involved in getting these folks on a call. We were also just paying $300 or $400, however much those things cost, just to get them on the call because the money was there. And it wasn't about value. It was just about like, how can we just like sell the crap out of you, And now, again, one of the reasons I think partnerships is finally starting to have a moment is that it's all about efficiency for a lot of companies. Obviously, some companies still have that capital, but everyone's talking about efficiency. They're talking about profitability. Partnerships is very profitable and efficient and can be very profitable and efficient. But then if you look at, I feel like people are like, hey, it has to be either you lead with your product or you lead with your sales team. And one of those has to be really good. And I'm like, well, why can't both be good? And I'm not trying to coin a new term, but like, why isn't it value-led selling? Or to your point, like customer value-led selling. And it's like, this is very poignantly visible in partner tech, especially, which I find kind of nuts. I would challenge anyone to find any single partner tech's piece of marketing or sales collateral that mentions ROI. It doesn't exist. Like, ROI in general is so conspicuously absent from the conversation and the vernacular of partnerships teams and partner tech companies. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is why we haven't succeeded yet, because like, when the people that make decisions, which right now is the CEO, the board, maybe the CRO, they look at everything from a bottom line perspective, an ROI perspective, like, what's my return on investment? And if the partnerships team can't demonstrate that, and if we can't help them demonstrate that, like, we've been around for 18 months. We have better reporting and analytics than pretty much any partner tech company on the market, the majority of which have been around between 10 and 30 years. And it's not Tableau. It's nothing crazy like that by any means, but the bar was just so low. Like, why are partner teams not talking about that? It's because nobody that's built any of these other companies, Rob at Superglue and Kenny at Partner Fleet notwithstanding, none of the people building these partner tech companies have ever done partnerships as a job. So they don't realize that one of the biggest pain points of partnerships teams is reporting and demonstrating value and ROI, which is why we built it in immediately. Because it's like, what's the point of giving you all these tools if like you're not even gonna have a job in 6 months because you can't demonstrate the value that you're bringing to the business that you're working at? Like, it's really upside down in a lot of ways.
It's so funny you say that. Our talk coming up at the previously mentioned Arcadia Leadership Experience is partners in the boardroom. Like, really, like, how do you tell the CFO what the F it is you do here? Like,
yeah, and what's the value? What's the value you provide? Like we did this every year. Like, what does the non-partner enabled funnel look like? What does the partner enabled funnel look like? And look at the difference between them. And roughly it was 3x. 3x better across the board: velocity, deal size, lifetime value, partner enabled. So, like, you've got to be able to assign a value to those motions. And I think the problem is that, like, things take time and they're people dependent, and, like, organizations need to figure out ways to augment those so that there isn't a 2-year runway in front of an ROI message. So probably a good segue, by the way, to do a bit of explaining about what Euler is, what your day job looks like beyond, engaging on LinkedIn and so on, and just give some context on what you guys are solving for.
It's all LinkedIn is all I do. It's
he's a true influencer.
Us too.
God, I do it a lot. It's I will say LinkedIn, and hopefully they don't shut me down for this. I will say it was a shockingly poor product for how much money that company has. But my gripes with LinkedIn aside, as you said earlier, Josh, if I start complaining about it, we'll be here all day. But yeah, so Euler is like a home base for partnerships teams. It's an all-encompassing, like, partnerships operating system that honestly aims to do a number of things. One, to take all of those annoyingly manual, operational, administrative tasks, all of the things that partnerships teams have to do, the 15 to 20 jobs they do on a weekly basis to keep the lights on of the program. That's not one of the two main things they were hired to do, which is to build relationships and to drive revenue. All that other stuff, we create tons of efficiency, tons of automation, tons of data and analytics around that. We plug in seamlessly to the CRM with the goal of taking that 30+% of time they're spending on those things and giving that back to them to go build relationships and drive revenue, while simultaneously creating radical transparency and continuous engagement with their partners, because we have all of the data, because we're plugged into their data sources, both in the form of like a partner portal, but also in form of a ton of automated updates that go out to email, that go out to Slack, and meet people where they work. So ultimately, it's a tool that partner teams can use to create efficiency around all of their workflows. But all of that is done for the purpose of actually collecting data and ultimately building a system that will help them understand what's working, what's not working, where should I be spending my time, where shouldn't I be spending my time, and just helping them just be more successful with less effort and giving them the data to do so, because every other team in a business has tools like this. You look at the rest of GTM, they've got tools out the wazoo, and partnerships has like these PRMs that were built for a channel model that doesn't really exist for most companies today. Or you have affiliate platforms that solve one very niche problem. Again, none of them have been built by anyone that's been in the job of partner leaders. PRM as a category has been in market for over 30 years and has less than 25% market penetration, which I personally would call a failure. So it's really kind of changing the game. We definitely do all the things that PRMs and portals do, but that's not what we're building. We're building an all-encompassing partnerships operating system.
Very cool. And obviously, if people want to get in touch with you, I assume LinkedIn is the best channel to do so.
LinkedIn, EulerApp.com, those are the best ones.
Awesome.
And before Justin closes this out, which he's about to do, I can't let it slide because you said it earlier. The idea of proactively pre-qualifying people out and telling them why they're not a fit is pure psychological sales warfare. I freaking love it.
I mean, I genuinely don't want
to make that one sale, man. Yeah. I mean, as it should be. Like, if you both can't agree, like, that solution is mission critical for that business, it's a bad opportunity for everyone involved. And a great potential marketing brand building stance to take on whatever profile is or whatever platform is right for your business. So, Greg, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. If you're a listener out there, you're just tuning in for the first time, please give us a subscribe on really whatever platform you're listening on. They all work. Also, a heads up, our new book, the Go-to-Market Cheat Code, will be hitting shelves in January 2025. So we are waiting for our good friends at Wiley over there to do their magic sauce and do the publishing side of the house. But hope that you guys will either go to Amazon right now. Pre-order that or join us in January for the launch. Again, thank you so much for joining us for the Go-to-Market Cheat Code, the podcast in parentheses, and we will see you next time.